Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. When we are talking about the definition of any subject, basically we are discussing its scope, its application, and its limitations. Before defining the subject psychology, you should keep two things in mind. One, all the sciences or the subjects which we have today in our modern world were previously under the umbrella of philosophy. Psychology was also part of philosophy. The another thing which you should keep in mind is that psychology is a science. Science always believes on facts and causal relationships, that it study the cause and effect relationship. Since the subject of psychology or psychological science is human being, so the psychology came into being from the time when first man set foot on the earth, but we did not know the exact origin and beginning of psychology when it separates itself from philosophy and became an experimental science. But we have, if we trace back, then we have written record from the Greek period. So in Greek, psychology was the combination of two words. The word psychology was the combination of two words. First, psych, and the other one was logos. Psych means soul, mind, or self. Soul, mind, or self. And logos means to know or knowledge. Thus, at that time, people were giving three meanings to this science. One, psychology as science of soul, psychology as science of mind, psychology as science of consciousness, psychology as science of behavior. Let's look on all these four aspects one by one. Psychology as a science of soul. As you know, soul is a concept, basically a concept. If we want to describe, we can't describe it. Our words fails. We can't describe. Any of you have ever seen soul? The answer will be no. So we have just a belief, a religious belief, that soul is present in our bodies. The previous the Greek philosophers were also of the view like Pythagoras, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Plotinus, and St. Augustine. Pythagoras was of the view that soul was immortal. Socrates was of the view that psyche is the term which means soul. And Plato was of the view that soul and body continue to function as different entities, as two separate systems, and soul is attached to the body until body becomes to the death. Aristotle was the first renowned or known psychologist who gave his book De Anima, which was the first book in the history of psychology. Other known philosophers of that time, of the Greek time, were Plotinus and or Saint Augustine, were also of the same views. Then there were some Muslim psychologists, Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, Ibn Miskwiya, Avicenna. They were also of the view that soul is immortal. But if we accept this definition of psychology as science of soul, then there was a lot of criticism on it, because we are claiming that we are a science. Psychology is a science. Since science believes on observation and experimentation, but soul cannot be observed. Soul is not a material thing. Soul is just a religious concept. So this definition was rejected, that psychology is the study of soul. This was rejected. Then there was another definition, which again green philosopher discussed, and for the time being they accepted it as psychology as science of mind. Plato was the first who introduced this concept of mind, and Aristotle was of the view that mind is the is the whole function of the body. John Locke was of the view that man or the baby comes with the tabula rasa, the concept of blank slate, and studies other philosophers of that time also studied this concept of mind. Mind is nothing by itself. Mind is an activity. Mind is an activity, nothing in itself. It's also a concept. It's not a material thing, because it is consisting of the mental processes, and it has certain aspects of the mental processes. First, cognition. Cognition is the state when you are aware of your environment. You are getting knowledge about the environment, learning or skill, knowing other matters. And the second aspect of the mental process is cognition. This is the dynamic aspect of the mental process. It basically takes place in reaction to some urge or drive or some impulse, which we are here defining as cognition. Affection. Affection is basically the feeling about some situation, event, thing. It might be positive or it might be negative, pleasant or unpleasant. You like someone, you dislike someone, you have certain ideas, you have certain beliefs, you like we as a Muslim we like to visit masjid. We like to visit our religious places, but as Muslim we will not like to go the places which are sacred to the other religions. So these are the certain kind of affections which we have. Then uh, there were philosophers of the Greek time like William Wundt, E.B. Tishner. They were also working on this concept of mind, that psychology is a science of mind, and they discovered that mind have three parts, mind have three aspects. First, consciousness, second, subconscious or unconscious. Conscious, when we are aware of the things. Subconscious, when we take some time to recognize, we cannot access them things which we remember immediately. And the third thing is the unconscious, where all our forgotten, all our memories lies, and we forget about the things, and we don't even have an idea of the. It is just like when you went in your primary school for the first time in your first class. You don't remember now, but it is a memory, but you don't remember who taught and what you did at that time. So it all is stored in the unconscious. Then there are certain characteristics of mind is active, sensitive, it's a continuous process. Certain activities stops, or when there is a illness, when there is an accident, then the mental activities are stopped. Mind is non-matter thing. Later on, Greek philosophers also were of the view that mind is the activity of brain. We can access brain, but we cannot measure or see the its activity, which is termed as mind or mental activities. So there was a lot of criticism on this definition of psychology, that mental processes or mind cannot be accessed. It is not a material thing. It is just a conceptual thing. So this definition of psychology was also rejected. Then there was another definition which states that psychology as a science of consciousness. Consciousness means immediate awareness, and if psychology is called science of consciousness, it will imply that psychology is concerned with an individual conscious states only, with the conscious states only. Then there were also Greek philosophers. John Dewey, he was of the view that consciousness is always goal oriented and individual can analyze his consciousness himself. Then William James, an American psychologist, he coined a term stream of consciousness. He was of the view that psychology is concerned with the flow of conscious thoughts. Then William James also divided this consciousness into focal consciousness and marginal consciousness. Focal consciousness, the part of consciousness which is focus of attention, is called focal consciousness. The marginal consciousness, the part of consciousness that other than the focal consciousness, is called marginal consciousness. Then again, there were certain objections on this definition of the psychology, that like mind and soul, consciousness is also an unscientific term or concept. Consciousness and states of consciousness cannot be studied scientifically. Consciousness experiences are subjective states. A person can be aware of only his or her consciousness states. No one knows about the other person's consciousness states. By giving this definition to the psychology, we exclude subconsciousness and unconsciousness acts which were also uh, of great consideration in the development of psychology. So, uh, accepting this definition as definition of psychology was not possible. So, this definition was also rejected. Then another definition came into being, that psychology is a science of behavior. Behavior refers to all the outward acts and actions of the living organisms. In other words, the observable acts are called behavior. When in response to the objection made to previous definitions of psychology, it was called that psychology is a science of behavior in the broader perspective. The philosophers which contributed to this definition of psychology were E.L. Thorndike, J.B. Watson, Pavlov, Skinner. They all were known as behavioristic scientists. Those who believe that uh, uh, we can learn from trial and error, we can learn from exercise, we can learn from the environment, we can learn from with the help of reinforcement, and uh, we can shape the behavior. So there was again criticism on this definition of psychology. First, Watson attached too much importance to the behavior and discarded the mental processes. जितने whatever we discussed previously, that mental processes are important. Then behavioristic school of thought was of the view that all we learn is from environment. They totally ignore our feelings, emotions, and thought processes. Uh, then the internal drives, because they were of the view that reinforcement only is cause of the behavior. So these were the criticisms on this definition of psychology. Then all the philosophers, all the scientists again gathered to redefine the definition of psychology, and they were succeeded in it, and they gave a comprehensive definition to this science of psychology, that psychology is concerned with the study of mind and behavior. That study is of science and psychology is the study or the scientific study. Basically, what is it? It is a scientific study of mind and behavior. You may say it as scientific study of mental processes and behavior. Always remember, science is not itself a knowledge, rather, it is a standard procedure to arrange and organize information. And in scientific methods, facts are studied and analyzed under controlled conditions. Information is examined objectively, and predictions are made on the basis of information collected. So, the goals of psychology are the same as those of the scientific method, that is, explanation, control, and prediction. Since psychology is a science, it also contains explanation of different conditions, events, and various types of human behavior. During psychological studies and experiments, the factors or variables that influence an individual behavior are brought under control, and a reaction likely to be manifested in individual behavior is predicted. Since psychological studies on individual mind as well as behavior uh, are called the science of behavior and mental processes. Psychology is divided into various branches, and every branch is oriented towards its specific goals.